it should be coming up.
Good morning and welcome to WNHH-FM's Dateline New Haven. Sorry about that delay. I'm Paul Bass, your host, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make our community tick. We're going a little far afield today. We've been talking about COVID-19. We're going to continue talking about COVID-19, but with a locally based foreign correspondent to talk about one of the oddest twists about this outbreak, a political twist that would understandably have escaped most people's notice yesterday here in New Haven, because it happened in Israel. Because of the COVID-19 crisis, the leader of Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, has found a way to hold on to power after 3 separate elections failed to produce a new government, and while he is facing an indictment and a pending trial for corruption. Because of COVID-19, he managed to maneuver with his main opponent, Benny Gantz, to create a new government, a unity government, quote unquote, that will avoid requiring Israelis to go for a 4th time to the polls. It's a remarkable political story. We surely don't understand it here, but someone who does understand it very well is our guest today. Tzipi Shmulevitz is the foreign correspondent in America for Israel's largest circulation print newspaper. Yeah, there still are print newspapers, Yediot Achronot. And she lives in the Audubon Square neighborhood, and she's here from Audubon Square via Zoom on today's program. Tzipi, thanks so much for coming back to explain this to us.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
And before we talked about this a little before and on, how you doing okay with COVID-19? Are you feeling well? You still doing your work?
Yeah. It's an out-of-body experience, but
it is.
I think just like everybody else, staying home, waiting for it to go, to just.
And you're working.
And I'm working. Yeah, journalism is an essential work these days.
It is, although we don't usually have to wear hazmat suits. You got a mask though?
I do.
Yeah, me too. What are you using for a mask?
I don't really use it that much, but I do. I just got a mask, just a regular mask. I don't even know how good it is, but
where did you get it? Where'd you get it?
Amazon.
Yeah, because the thing is, they see those masks. If we were in an operating room, it wouldn't help us. If we were in a crowded theater, it wouldn't help us. I guess they're telling us it would help us not spread it unknowingly or get it randomly when we're out around.
Yeah.
But we're here to talk about Israel. So Israel, 3 straight elections. You came on the radio to tell us, under a parliamentary system, if the person with the most votes, party with the most votes, can't form a government, you got to vote all over again. And Israel is so divided, just like America, that they had 3 separate elections where they couldn't decide, and there's about to be a 4th. And then Benjamin Netanyahu, the leader who's under fire, longest-serving prime minister, if I'm not mistaken, but he's on the ropes finally because of corruption charges. He found a way to get Benny Gantz of the Blue and White Party coalition to agree to a joint government in which Netanyahu will serve first as prime minister for 19 months, and then Gantz allegedly, I don't believe it, will then take a second turn in 18 months to lead. How did this happen?
Well, I don't even know where to start. So we had 3 elections in less than a year. And yes, the country is divided, but it's not really divided politically. It's everybody, almost the entire population of Israel is center and right. You don't have much. The left is pretty much left. And so the country is not politically divided. It's just it's either you're pro Netanyahu or against him. Benny Gantz's ticket, which was the reason why he received most of the votes in the last election, was, I will not sit in a government with somebody who is under indictment. And
reasonable position.
Yes, that was his ticket. It's not that politically, he's not very different than Netanyahu. They are both, they agree on most things.
But their coalitions were different. He was willing to serve
true.
with the Arab list. He had the remnants of the left, people who didn't want annexation of the West Bank settlements supported him.
Yeah, because he was the sane, clean, ethically democratic opposition, democratic alternative to somebody who became more and more and more authoritarian, not to mention incredibly corrupt. So that was his ticket, and this is why he won most of the vote. He couldn't form a government because the country is really very, very divided. And then came the unbelievable twist. He just decided that he's going to sit with Netanyahu. Now,
something he said he would never do.
Something he promised he will never do.
So how did it change? Was it COVID-19, Netanyahu invoking it?
That's the formal excuse. And I'm sure that Gantz thinks that he's doing what's good for the country right now. But nobody really believed that this is some kind of emergency government. They formed the biggest government in the history of Israel. We're gonna have 36 ministers. 36. Mm-hmm. Who needs 36 ministers?
Is that because each side had to get something, right?
Exactly.
So they'll tell Gantz, we'll give you these ministers, but we're going to agree not to do anything on those issues until COVID passes.
Yes, and they agreed on a whole lot of broader agenda that has nothing to do with the pandemic. A lot of money is going to go to just build this government while people are out of work. They beg for help. Most of these things, when you go to the lowest resolutions, it has nothing to do with the crisis. So the speculations are endless. Ehud Barak, who was the prime minister of Israel, went on TV yesterday and basically said that Netanyahu extorts Gantz, that he's got something on him.
Wow, he said that. So it is a former prime minister. So in Israel, you can go on TV and say those things.
He went on TV and said that.
Although Donald Trump would say things like that. He makes up things about people.
Yeah, true. But, of course. But
did he provide any evidence, Tzipi? Was there did he have something on him?
No. But I don't think anybody can rule it out.
So how's it going to work, Tzipi? What on the ground? What does this mean? What was the deal?
Well, most of the deal, nobody knows what it is. Basically, Netanyahu is going to be the prime minister for the next year and a half, 18 months. And then they're going to switch. Gantz going to be the acting prime minister when Netanyahu is out of the country. And then they're going to switch. And Netanyahu will be number two. The whole government is going to be 3 years. And that's by itself is kind of illegal because you cannot just decide that your term is 3 years. It should be 4. You cannot just go out and decide.
Now, there is precedent. We did have a unity government once before, Labor Likud, right? How did that work out?
Well, honestly, I can't remember the last time there was a government that served its full term in Israel.
But when they switched prime ministers, they were being remember they took terms?
Yeah, that was a long time ago. That was Yitzhak Shamir and Yitzhak Rabin. That was in the 80s, I think.
But I had the sense that it worked, that those were sincere leaders there wasn't this backdrop of a corruption.
The country was very, very different.
We're talking to Tzipi Smilovitz, who's the foreign correspondent for Yediot Achronot, Israel's largest circulation print paper. She lives here in New Haven. She's their American correspondent. She's telling us about this crazy deal that happened in Israel to prevent a fourth straight election after unresolved decision about who will run the country with a power-sharing deal that keeps Benjamin Netanyahu in power. But as she pointed out today, it's being called a COVID-created emergency government, but it really has very little to do with COVID. Now, just to make that clear, did they talk at all about how this will help the government address COVID? Did they even pretend?
They pretend, but it's all words and symbolism. Let's come together to beat this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody got any concrete actions. I think they began to ease the quarantine in Israel, but I feel like it's too early over there.
Is it like over here, like here in in the United States, where there's this divide, although it's not 50-50, I think it's going to be because Fox News has a way of changing people's minds when they go full tilt with the president. But there is this divide in the country of people think we should be reopening, and they feel that basically Democrats are wusses. And then the other side that says if we reopen too quickly, we're going to have a second wave that's worse. Is that happening in Israel too?
No. Here's the thing. Here's the difference. There is very little daylight between Netanyahu and Trump.
Mm.
But the one difference that there is between them, and I'm going to be blunt, is that Netanyahu is a smart man who reads books and believes in science.
And has spent his whole life in government. I mean, the guy, when
exactly.
he's a master in foreign policy, in my opinion. I don't agree with him, but he knows how to deal with Russia, with the leader of Turkey, with the Arab leaders and the private channel.
And when it comes to, Netanyahu, he will not deny climate change. And he will not deny that the pandemic actually happens. Now, the way he plays and exploits crisis, that's a totally different thing. He's one of the most cynic leaders the world has ever seen. But he understands that the crisis is real. So that's a big difference between him and Donald Trump. He will not go out there and tell people to protest against staying home. He will not do this. So that's a difference. That's one thing. The other is that we don't, it's a very divided country, but we don't really have our version of Fox News. Not to that extent.
Israel Hayom?
Yeah, that was my next point. Yeah, it's a newspaper and it's not the same, especially now when people are not out and you can't get the newspaper. So it doesn't reach the same circulation that it did. And even though Israel Hayom, it really is a very Fox Newsy, but again, they do what Netanyahu says. And Netanyahu does not deny that this is an issue.
Tibi, you grew up in Israel.
Yeah.
From afar, my sense is that you folks know about this. And so do people in the occupied territories. You're used to having the shelter in place because of threats.
Yeah.
Right? People know that at no warning, you got to scramble with your whole family into a bomb shelter. Would I be wrong to assume that maybe Israeli society, despite the special problem with Haredi communities like Bnei Brak, where a very ultra-religious community wasn't following the guidelines, didn't have the information, so they got their worst outbreaks. But in Israeli society at large, am I right to conclude that you've kind of been around? This isn't your first rodeo with quarantines.
Yeah. I remember the first Gulf War.
Right, with the chemical weapons you're worried about.
We spent weeks. That was really shelter in place. You could not go out even for a minute. So, and yes, there were wars, there were bombings, and we have a history of this. I think this is kind of different because, because it's a more interconnected world and there's social media, and you feel that you miss people more. I think you miss going out and seeing people more. But yeah, there is a shared experience that once in a while something really terrible happens and you should stay home. At the same time, the psychological effect of staying home for a long time, it's the same. It's the same like here, like everywhere else. It's very, very difficult.
One thing that struck us, I know nothing about Israel. I went there once, and the people we met said that they smoke more. There's kind of more nerves because they always feel like any second a bomb could become a missile.
Yeah. It's a very, very stressful place. At the same time, I think that people they live in the moment,
Right.
because any minute something really awful can
Which
happen.
is true for everybody else, but when you haven't had the direct experience of that, you
Yeah,
could fool yourself into thinking you can get everything set for the future and there won't be a coronavirus or a stock
exactly.
market crash or a bombing
Exactly.
or
That's
a 9
that
11.
that that's one reason why you look at the data and you find that per capita Israelis travels the world more than any other nation.
Really?
Yes,
Why is
e-
that?
even though it's extremely expensive, even though most people can't afford all this traveling, because there is this mentality that we live in the moment because tomorrow we can die.
Mm.
So yeah, we can't afford this trip to Australia, but hey, let's do it anyway. And that's what's happening. That's exactly what's happening. But nobody in Israel, and that's really a big difference then from the United States. Nobody in Israel denied that this pandemic is really, really very serious. There is a real debate on whether we should reopen the economy or not. Uh, what's the price? Are we willing to sacrifice old people and all that? But nobody says, look, this is like the flu. It's not.
Okay, so as we're talking about how COVID-19 here in Dateline, New Haven, affected, brought an immediate end to a year plus long stalemate in Israel over who's going to run the country. So we talked about how you felt there was consensus already for the most part on COVID-19. So that was kind of a fig leaf. Tell me if I'm right about this. My understanding about the deal is that they agreed that most issues actually won't be dealt with for a while. They carved out just a handful of issues that the new government will deal with. And the one that blew everybody's mind is that Benny Gantz agreed that starting July 1st, despite the fundamental difference between the two sides, this new government would be allowed to start annexing the West Bank and
Yeah.
putting through President Trump's proposal for how to deal with the Middle East, with the complete opposition of the Palestinians and with the opposition of a good chunk of Israeli society, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, Gantz's vote, even though Benny Gantz himself, I guess, is okay with it, so it's going to happen. My understanding is that a majority of his bloc would have opposed that. Am I wrong about that?
I think so. Yeah. Everybody is in the center, which is the left that you can go these days in Israel is somewhere in the center. I mean, there is very little liberalism left. Uh, so I think most people understand that this is not a good thing in the long term. But Gantz really betrayed his voters in so many ways, and
would this be one way?
this would definitely be one way. Here's what I can tell you, and this is just I'm giving you Israeli journalism gossip.
All right, we like that.
Yeah, I mean it's completely I cannot verify any of this, but some very connected reporters in Israel say that Netanyahu thinks that Trump is done.
Mm.
Yeah, he thinks that this crisis.
I think he's wrong. Netanyahu is so smart about politics, but I don't believe anyone's going to think Trump is done. Even if he loses the election, I don't know that he's done.
That's something else. But
no, but I don't know that he's going to lose the election either.
That's right. We live here. We know something else. But that's what he feels. He thinks that Trump is done, which might be a reason for him to try and do this as quickly as possible before the election.
Oh, right. He doesn't want to count. He would intelligently believe you can't count on Trump still being there in January.
Exactly.
Right.
That's and so this might be a reason why it's suddenly so urgent. Gantz, look, at the end of the day, again, he's politically he's just to the right, and I don't know where he stands. The thing about Gantz, the one thing that made people on the left like him or think that is really the lesser of two evils, is that there were points where he showed the common sense that you hoped. I mean, he was in favor of the Iran deal, which was something that went against pretty much everyone in the top political feelings, and he was for it because he looked at the facts, and you said, okay, he's a right winger, but he is a sane, common sense guy. He is not corrupt. He will not be there for himself. It's not about his survival. But then he just did this 180, and this is something really history will look back in shock.
And then, so let's talk about that corruption issue, because that was another central issue. Yeah. And tell me if I'm wrong about this, that unlike us in America, who are looking at the West Bank issues, the Middle East peace issues, the Palestinian issues foremost, you're saying that in Israel there's actually consensus on much of that, and that the real issue is Benjamin Netanyahu. The way the real issue here in America is really Trump, and nothing but Trump. And the issue with Netanyahu, in part, was corruption. He's been indicted on corruption charges, and there are a lot of legal unresolved questions about whether, as prime minister, he can go on trial, right? So now, the thing that jumped out at me about this deal was it sounds like he gets to pick his prosecutor now, that as long as he's in power as prime minister, he has protections he otherwise doesn't have against going to jail. Can you tell us specifically what this deal means?
That's exactly that. There is no, the law doesn't have an answer to what should be done when a prime minister is under indictment. Nobody envisioned a possibility that a prime minister who was charging bribery will not quit. I mean,
right, because his predecessor did.
Right? Yes, Olmert did.
Olmert, right?
Yeah, Olmert did. Look, Yitzhak Rabin, may you rest in peace. He resigned when his wife had a bank account in Switzerland, which back in the days was not allowed.
Yeah, his wife,
his wife had a bank account. It was very small. It was like a few $100 she had in a bank account in Switzerland. It was not allowed. He resigned the day it was discovered. This is how deep the country fell. Now you have somebody, not only that he cannot go to jail as long as he is prime minister, there are all other issues, and that's another thing that Ehud Barak talked about yesterday. He said there are so many other cases that he should be indicted for, and now they're not even going to investigate them.
So what happens now? Can he go on trial while he's prime minister?
Yeah.
But who's going to prosecute him? Like under this deal, is it true that he gets to name the prosecutor?
I don't think it's not that blunt, but I think that's what's going to happen on the ground. Yeah.
So is it fair to say it gives him more influence?
Of course. Of course.
And then what's the question that's going to come? There's a crucial question coming up before the court, before his case proceeds. Does he have a say over the judge, over that question?
He shouldn't have, and at least on the surface, he's not going to have. But I can tell you that at the beginning of next week, there only already be a few petitions to the Supreme Court about the legality of this deal. I mean, they will have to decide if this deal between Netanyahu and Gantz is even legal, because it has so many precedents and so many things that never happened. But the whole thing at the end of the day is about Netanyahu's survival. And Gantz can tell himself that he's doing what's good for the country, and maybe he really believes that. But what he actually did was he really saved Netanyahu's. Well, I don't want.
You could say it. You could say it.
I can say ass.
Yeah.
Okay. He saved his ass.
So we're talking to Sippy Smilowitz, who's the American correspondent based in New Haven for Israel's largest circulation print newspaper, Yediot Ahronot. How is the paper doing? Are more people reading it online, fewer in print?
It's tough. It's tough. It's tough. It's incredibly tough on the business side, obviously.
Are you in danger of furlough like the tens of thousands of American reporters?
Not yet. They need somebody in America.
They do.
So I guess not yet, but it hasn't been easy. I have a lot of friends back in Israel who, they just went home. They wait. Many lost their job. It's been, the thing about this pandemic is that it all happened so fast.
Yeah.
Man, it just took a couple of weeks for everything to crash.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that you don't know how really to deal with. So, yeah.
So one last issue that we talked about, how in this deal in Israel, this power sharing deal, two other questions actually come up. What is the likelihood, because there's deep skepticism that when Netanyahu's 18 months are up, that Gantz will actually get a turn to govern as opposed to the government falling apart? They claim safeguards are put in, that he'll get at least 6 months no matter what, which already shaves a year off it. And they claim, but at least he'll be able to run as the incumbent. Are there real safeguards in place, or are we just going to see 18 months to Netanyahu and then another election?
Here's the thing about those safeguards. They are not very different than what we discovered during the Trump presidency about a whole lot of safeguards that should have protect us from a lot of corruption and a lot of the things that he just ignored everything. He ignored norms and precedent and rules and laws. He just ignored them. Same with Netanyahu. I mean, yeah, there is an agreement and they signed it, but I don't know that you can be certain that 18 months from now, Netanyahu is going to just walk out. Judging by history, it's 50-50 chances best.
So the third issue, as I understand it, besides COVID and annexation of the West Bank, that this new government has agreed it can deal with, is the role of the Orthodox in the military. Right now, there's an exemption for Orthodox men not to serve in the military because of the influence of government. Benny Gantz's side, I believe, kind of championed the secular view that Orthodox should have the same rules as everybody else. Is this going to change? Will Orthodox men start serving? And will there be any impact on what American Jews care about, which is the hegemony of Orthodox right-wing Orthodox religious authorities as the state deciders about who's a Jew, who can get married, who can convert in Israel?
The skeptic in me think that no. The thing about blue and white, it was a combination of one party that was called Yesh Atid, there's a future, that was Yair Lapid party. And they merged with Benny Gantz and Gabi Ashkenazi and all sort of new people, and they formed a new party. Now Gantz went to sit with Netanyahu, so Yesh Atid, they're in the opposition. And Yesh Atid was the party that championed everybody should go to the military. That was one of their biggest tickets. Orthodox should go to the military. Now they're not part of Kahol Lavan. They're not part of blue and white. So this is not a top issue. Okay. It's not a top issue for Gantz anymore. But it is a top issue for Netanyahu, because without the religious right, he's in a real problem.
That's right, because coalition doesn't hold, right? But he did get rid of Avigdor Lieberman, his former kind of bodyguard who emerged as a right-wing leader and power broker. They're always together, off again. Why did he ditch him?
Oh, no. Avigdor Lieberman is the reason why we went to a third election, because he refused to. Avigdor Lieberman is probably one of Netanyahu's biggest nemesis.
Yeah.
There is a real personal hatred there.
All right. So as we're talking about what's happening in Israel with COVID-19 and this deal, of course, there's the question of Arab Israeli citizens.
Hmm.
They boycotted many elections, if I remember correctly, because they feel they're not equal citizens in this system. The last election, they did decide to participate to try to elect Gantz, which is one reason Netanyahu didn't win. There were always Netanyahu used that against Gantz, sort of the way Trump is now trying to use Chinese American and Asian American politicians like Gary Locke against Joe Biden. He said basically, Gantz, you're too pro-Arab. Look, you're going to let them in the government. Are they part of this government? And what does this mean for the future of Arabs as citizens of Israeli society?
Well, no, obviously they're not part of this government, and you know, I think they're just going to. There's two options. One is that they will just go back and say, "Look, we tried, and obviously they don't want us, and we don't go. We're not going to vote anymore," which will be a complete defeat. That's the deficit. I don't think they should do this. The other option is that this will galvanize them because they realize that they have a real power, and if they can form a true left party with Meretz and Labour and whatever was left from the Israeli left, they can have a real impact. They can have a real impact. Again, what Gantz did was it was shameful. That's just another aspect of where he's betrayed so many people. That's just shameful.
Will there be a reaction to that sooner than the year and a half? What's going to happen to the majority of Benny Gantz's coalition that feels he betrayed them?
Well, I don't know if we can anticipate anything right now. You don't even know when we can go out. So I don't know if we can. And I think that one of the reasons why I think that Netanyahu's win is so clear right now. He really managed to just discourage the Israeli public, and it's a little bit like a cult. You have a whole lot of Israelis who cannot. They vote for Netanyahu because they cannot even imagine a country with Netanyahu not its leader.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the way that we can't survive. It's like there was no Israel before Netanyahu, and it can't be without him.
Well, it's one way I always try to understand the strategy from afar. And this to me with Netanyahu's political strategy electorally, when he's on the ropes, he's been there so long, he has corruption charges. To me, it seems to reflect somewhat of the strategy about dealing with Palestinians in the world community, which is that if you hang in one more day, you'll figure it out. Like, the two-state solution did not succeed. The one-state solution did not succeed. I always felt that Netanyahu, who is a lifelong skilled politician and diplomat, figured that if he just holds on to his position long enough, Sharon talked about this too, you get facts on the ground. I wonder if similarly he figured, just keep dancing until the music stops. So I'm on the ropes. People don't want me in there anymore. But then COVID came along. Who knew that was going to come along?
Yeah.
And now he saved his political career yet again because he could outmaneuver a rookie politician.
Yeah. That's you nailed it. Yeah.
All right.
He's an excellent survivor, and and this is all about. I don't really think that this is all about him not going to jail. I mean, at this point, it's too late. But a year ago, 18 months ago, if you would go to Netanyahu and tell him, resign, and we just forget about all these crimes, and he would take the deal. He would take the deal. He would resign.
And then run again in a year.
No, he doesn't need that. No, he would resign, takes his wife all over the world, give lectures for $500,000, live the good life. He would take it. But at some point, it became a surviving mechanism because without staying in the prime minister mansion, you would go to jail.
Yeah.
So that's what he's doing. He's staying. He is hunkering down. He is quarantined in the prime minister mansion. I am not leaving.
Such an interesting drama. And thank you for helping us get a handle on it here, Sydney. We're so honored to have foreign correspondent from Yedidot Achronot here in New Haven and taking the time to come on WNHH-FM to update us. And are you and your friends and are your friends and family and colleagues in Israel feeling okay? Is
Yeah, they're
COVID
all
hitting
yeah,
you?
yeah, they're all good. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you continue to
Thank you,
stay
Paul.
healthy, continue
Yeah,
to
you
turn out
too.
the stories. Are listeners able to read your stories in English, or is it on the web only in Hebrew?
Now it's all in Hebrew.
Okay, so if you read Hebrew, what's the website?
Oh, it's ynet, ynet.co.il.
All right. Thank you, Tzipi Shmilwitz, so much for
Thank you,
joining us
Paul. You
again on
take
Dateline
care.
Heaven. What a pleasure. Thank you to Harry Dross, the miracle man behind the controls, our station manager. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience, performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night long here at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.